Hey friends, this is Marilyn from TarotClarity.com, and today I will be showcasing two decks that I've been thinking about comparing side by side since I got the second of the two. Now, those of you who watch me regularly may recall that when I received the Metanoia Marseille, sorry I have to reach far, by Bouchette design, I oohed and awed. Now, unfortunately, I was only able to get the mini size because by the time it came on my radar, it was already not available. Now, at the time when I got the mini size, I was okay with it. You know, I thought, oh, it's okay, it's a nice size. But in the weeks that have passed, I really regret that I don't have the larger standard size. Because I think in some ways to do a fair comparison between these two decks, I really do need to have a larger size so that you can see. I'll do my best to compare. Now the second deck is the other deck that I oohed and awed about. And this, I oohed and awed because this deck exceeded all expectations. Now the first deck, is, as mentioned, is the Matronua Marseille. And the second deck has a very similar name. Now on the box it's called Tarocchi Italiani di Pinta a mano da Valentina de Luca. So on the box it says, you know, Italian tarocchi. It's got the little logo standing for Matronua Marseille. And, but I don't know that anywhere on the box does it officially say the Matronua Marseille. However, that's what we call it. So the Metanoia and the Matronua have similar sounding names, and it can get confusing. So if I slip up and I refer to one as the other or whatever, please forgive me. The larger is the Matronua and the smaller is the Metanoia. Matronua, I understand from Valentina, is a reference to womanhood and the matron of a clan, and maybe secret knowledge or information that gets passed down. Maybe I embellish that a little bit, but it does have to do with feminine lineage. So let's flip the camera and get started. Now the Metanoia came with a few additional cards. It came, because sometimes when you do a run with a, deck, maybe they gave an option for 90 cards or something like that. So the standard deck is 78, but we have the introduction card. Then we have, numerology to assist somebody to understand the system, if they're new to it in particular. Then we have little keywords for the Triumph cards. Then we have perhaps keywords for the suit and the numbers as they relate to the suits. And then here we have one for aces and the suits. Then there's two additional cards if you want to keep them in the deck and use them. Could be handy when you're doing readings about time. One suggesting it takes time and one suggesting that the time is now. So it may be handy because sometimes it's not really always easy to know time in a tarot deck. If somebody wants to know time, the methods. And I don't typically discuss it on my videos because I keep it for something that I teach on my lessons. But there are methods for understanding time, but these are very direct. So why not leave them in the deck? The Matronua deck came with a lovely handwritten card from Valentina, which I cherish and will keep with the deck as part of its provenance. Then we have just the card introducing what it is, the Matronua Tarocchi di Matronua, created by Valentina de Luca. Certification of authentication, 82 card deck, because that alerts us that we do have some extra cards in the deck. The standard deck is 78. And then I have number 55 of 1,000. And then we have the Matronua stamp or embossment. Now, because of the size difference, the Matronua, of course, is larger than standard, and then the Metanoia is smaller than standard, right? So we have to bear that in mind. Now, as far, I'll talk about the card stock and stuff like that. The Metanoia, I love the card stock. It's got the velvet petal, a rose petal on both sides. It riffle shuffles like a dream. And it's got the beautiful blue edge, eggshell blue. The Matronua has quality cardstock. So it's art paper. Almost, I don't know if this is technically correct, but it almost seems quality enough to actually do a watercolor painting on it. Now, I don't think that's true necessarily because it doesn't have like texture to it, but it feels like it's quality cardstock. And although it's large and it's hard for me to riffle shuffle in big chunks, I break it down and I can riffle shuffle it. And Valentina has told me directly that don't fear riffle shuffling this deck. She stands behind its ability to riffle shuffle. So I do it, and you can see it holds up. Sometimes after a few dozen riffle shuffles, a deck starts to show signs of wear, just after a few. But neither of these decks really are doing that. So they're both holding up. So they're both in the tradition of TDM, Marseille, right? They're both honoring that tradition. Now, Valentina, hers tend to honor because it's an Italian Marseille, right? So it tends to honor the Italian tradition in the Marseille style. And this one, I think, is a modern Marseille, not necessarily referencing the traditional Italian or the French, a new slant on an old favorite, right? So I'm going to hold it up so that you can see the fullness of it. So here we have, and it's modern too, so the images may be more modern. So we have a Pomeranian here, where usually we have a scraggly little doggy, right? And we have a person, nice clothes, or, I don't know what that is exactly, but it looks nice. Perhaps those are leggings, I'm not sure. Walking stick and normal stuff. Now, the difference in the way that they're created is the Metanoia is created with like a stylus and an art pad, right? So it's like more of a computerized kind of, you do it with, you're drawing, the artist is drawing directly on a art pad with a stylus. This one is done with paintbrush. So they're completely different. Now bear in mind, and I don't know how long the Metanoia took to create. I don't think that information was given in the little insert. But Valentina has said on a number of occasions that it took her 6 months. Now, 6 months of every single day working from morning till night, including weekends. So she worked like a fiend to get this done. And bear in mind that every single card was hand painted. So the method will look different, right? We can see a difference. We see, like, for example, the background sort of, we can tell that it's kind of like got not a hand touch to it. I think you can tell. And I'm not going to do that comparison for every single card, but I do think it's worth noting that the two cards were created differently. And we have the same ingredients of a little dog. Somebody here, we can tell the landscape is much more in detail. We do seem to, is this a hedge or is this a cliff? Is he walking along a cliff and there's like a gap, a crevice? Now, this guy kind of reminds me of Jack the Ripper. I swear to goodness. Every time I see this guy, I think of Jack the Ripper trying to con somebody. So we do have a game of the con, although he does seem to have the suits, the 4 suits represented here, which we don't typically see in a Tarot of Marseille, but we also see it here in this deck. So in both of these decks, we seem to have the suits represented on the table. And somebody with sleight of hand gesture with a wand. So there can still be a con game going on. And in this hand, I think there's a ball in that hand. I don't think it's the hollow space or the negative space. It looks like there's a little ball, which could be part of a trick. They're both outside. Now the landscape here is very detailed, and here it's, generalized. Perhaps I don't know if I'll get into showing the pips or not. We do see some ethnic diversity also in the more modern deck, because as a modern day deck, when this deck was based upon the historic decks, in those days when the historic decks were created, it was created in Italy. Then it was created typically in northern Italy, most frequently, right? In the northern Italy, who had fair skin. They were blondes. My grandmother was from Milan. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. I got the dark stuff from other relatives, but so that's who they were. But today in modern society, all of us, from no matter where we are, we're different. We're divergent. So we have a diverse representation, and we'll see that through a lot of the cards. Here we have the Empress. The Emperor, and they both have a nod to historic emperors that are facing our left, with the shield and his staff, his helmet. He's seated out of doors. So despite the, different ethnic, references, different type of hat or whatever, we can tell that they're the same person. They represent the same concept. Remember, tarot is about concepts. The Triumph cards were about concepts. This was the concept of whatever the Pope would evoke. It could have been counsel. It could have been piety. It could have been trust. I mean, they were the highest authority, in many cases higher than the legal authority. Now we have we have 2 lover cards for the Matronua, This one is more in keeping with the Italian, the original, the earliest lover cards that we have, seem to be more about the concept of love and betrothal and commitment and a bond. In keeping with Marseille, the Marseille style tends to have a couple women there. Sometimes the third party seems to be like an officiant, somebody or a legal authority who is, allowing the marriage to take place, or allowing it, giving it, the word escapes me, but you know what I'm saying. But we have the common ingredients for Marseille. We have Cupid, here in front of the sun, here, I guess, in front of the sun as well. And this could be in Marseille, it's hard to know. Is an officiant or an illegal authority who's granting permission for the couple to marry, or is it a guy who's stuck between 2 choices, vice or virtue? Do I want the pretty dish, or do I want the one who will make a really good wife? That kind of thing. And as with most of these cards, we can readily, despite their difference in reference of time, we can definitely recognize that this is the Chariot. I really love these horses. The spots on the golden horse or the brown horse, they almost look like they're like lights from within, more than they are speckled on the horse. This one, it looks more like the coat of the horse has speckles, but this one almost looks like the horse is radiating from within. It's kind of pretty. Notice the difference between perhaps, have the way that the art was done. We have a gap between the sleeve and the hand. We have a little negative space. Could be something that was unintentionally missed. It could be something that was intentional. But I don't think it was intending to be the hand, because the hand does have a flesh tone to it. And here I can't zoom in as closely, but you can see and realize every single solitary thing was brushed to paper. And look at this. I mean, we can see the dust kicking up as the horse, and it's incredible. The detail in this is incredible. Again, we can recognize justice. And we have an ethnically divergent face. Am I saying that properly? Reminding us that not everybody looks like this person, right? But they have the same ingredients, and they're sitting in a chair, and they're looking at us pretty straightforward, as justice frequently does in the Marseille. Okay, so here we have two traditions with the Matronua. We have one in keeping with the TDM style, which is the elder with his walking cane and his lantern, but one that has an earlier tradition of the elder, the name not being the hermit, but time, reminding us that time passes, right? Or time flies. Sometimes it flies quickly, sometimes it's slow. By the time a person is this age, he's seen a lot of stuff. And we have the timepiece to remind us, and we have the wings to remind us. But we also have the look of the aged one to show us. And he's hunched over, and in some of the earlier decks, he's got a hunchback. I've discussed that many times. And walking sticks. But here, he's got more of he's standing upright, he's old, but he's noble. He's got the cane, he's aged, and he's got a lantern. And I've discussed in many, many videos how I think that changed from the hourglass to the lantern. Maybe it was misunderstood. And maybe it was believed that the timepiece was a lantern, and that maybe they thought it was a nod to Diogenes, right? And so suddenly he became Diogenes. Now, I love this treatment of light. It doesn't show forward. It shines like that. Oh, it's just so beautiful. And the rays, or just look at the spectrum of color. That's really beautiful. But both of these decks have incredible insight and are very well done. But just bear in mind that they're done differently. Okay, we have the Wheel of Fortune, very much in keeping with the tradition of the TDM, these creatures that who knows what they are, right? Fortuna, Lady Luck on top. But the Italians, they have a history of understanding what was happening on the Fortuna, on the Wheel of Fortune. And so when they do the deck, when the Italian deck became popular in Marseille, and then the Italians saw how the French changed it. Everything about France was always so fashionable. So they maybe tweaked their deck to be more in keeping and more fashionable in keeping with the French styles, because the French were buying their decks. They weren't stupid. But then we see, maybe a greater understanding of what these things were. Maybe what the Italian tradition, maybe they understood better what those creatures were. This could be suggestive of water. Kind of is floating. I'm not sure on what. And in neither of these do we have a person who no longer reigns, as we see in some of the Italian decks. But remember, this one is an Italian Marseille, and this one is a modern day Marseille. But we don't have the creature on the bottom. But whoever no longer reigns in this one, I think we can trust it. He fell in the water. And perhaps here he fell into the abyss. We do have the familiar woman for both. In this one, she's more at peace. In this one, the lion, I swear, it seems like it's part of her. So this is, she's taming something within herself. I love that. So she's not like just like manhandling a lion. It's like she's managing her own fierceness. But here it's more like they're separate things, and they have a common, they have a bond, a peaceful bond. We have the Hanged One. This one looks like Jack the Ripper from the magician got caught. And he's getting his punishment. So I don't know if it's supposed to be the same guy or not, but that's how I read it. And we don't really have a structured gallows like we do in traditional TDM, as we do here, right? We have a structured gallows rather, excuse me. But in both, he's awake, because the point of it, traditionally, according to the Italians who invented this, it was a wanted poster. You were supposed to be able to identify them. It was part of the disgrace and humiliation. Here we have death. And here we have articulated other humans who have gone before, of different stations in life, comes and gets us all. Remember when the day when these, this deck was when these decks were created, the plague was a thing and people were dropping like flies. Here we don't have the articulation of other humans. We just have death with his scythe chopping through. In both, in neither is the name death. It's just the 13th card, in keeping with many traditional decks that do not name the death card. Here we have temperance. This is one of my favorite temperance cards. I have a few favorite temperance cards. Of the ones that are representational, I love how the liquids merge and we see that they're different. Not only are the vessels different, but it's like alchemical for real. And here we have a sense that there's magic here also. It's just sparkly. And in both, the nod to the fact that temperance is a virtue. So she has wings. Devil has wings also, but these are not wings of virtue. And with the Matronua, we get two. We have one that's more in keeping with the TDM style that we see here. He's got his minions. They're tethered or bound to something that he stands on, his platform. They're bound to his platform. They do his bidding, and there's some difference in how he's represented, but, he's got a torch, he's got something in his head, maybe horns or whatever. And this one is not a nod to Italian decks, but it's more of a nod to the Roux in Brussels, because the deck did spread to other cultures besides France. I like to use this one, because it's more interesting. I do like this one. And we have, again, like the devil card, we have two towers. Whoops. Here we go. Here we have the traditional, more or less, TDM tower. And we saw in the early mass-produced decks of like the Rosenwald, we have a tower that's being struck by lightning, because I think the concept of the card was something coming from the heavens, or maybe specifically thunder and lightning. So if you bear in mind that what got struck in Italy in the Middle Ages by thunder and lightning, more than likely it was their towers that they were very proud of building. So it was translated into the French as towers. Could be the Tower of God, whatever they named it. But the concept was something being struck by lightning. Well, perhaps in another country, the Rouen Brussels pattern, maybe they didn't have towers. The thing that got struck by lightning, the concept being lightning, the thing that got struck by lightning was trees. I go back and forth between which of these two I keep in the deck. Sometimes I use this one. Sometimes I use this one. It's a tough choice for me. And in both of the towers, we do have people falling. Here we have the star. And in either case, we can recognize that this is the star card. Very beautiful and very similar representation. Of course, we have nudity, as we traditionally do in tarot decks, because it's medieval art, right? Art from the Renaissance. So there was nudity. If you're offended by the type of nudity you could see in an art museum, then, or if you're offended in any way by tarot, this channel's not for you or your children. But if you appreciate beauty and stuff like that, you're in the right place. So again, in the water, we see magic like we saw coming from the Temperance card. This is such a beautiful card. And of course, the concept is the star. And I've discussed it at length, many videos. Almost every single time we see the star card. When I went down the rabbit hole of why was the sign of Aquarius chosen to be the star card. And you're probably tired of hearing the story, but if you're not, you can listen to it. You can, if you are, then you can go find one of my other videos. I discuss it frequently. And here with the moon, we have, again, another sign, another option. The Brussels Rouen or the Via Ville, we see the moon card with a woman spinning thread at night. We see it in other decks where she's spinning the thread in the sun. So I think it was it the Louis the Estensi Tarot, or what is it? I forget what the other name of it was. I call it the Estensi Tarot. Was it the Estensi Tarot where the moon has the spinner under the sun? Excuse me, the sun card where the spinner of the thread is in the sun. But at some point it got confused or changed, and it was the thread spinner under the moon. Here we have a more traditional TDM style, which is what I keep in the deck usually. And we have the same ingredients. So in either case, we can definitely recognize who it is. Now here, what it is, we don't have the towers as we do traditionally have towers in TDM. And whenever we see water in this deck, we see sparkles, like the essence of life is kind of magical. These are very similar. There's no mistaking in either one of these cards that this is the sun. And in both cases, they seem to be young people. Could be siblings. And here we have Judgment. Same ingredients. The angel, the horn, people popping up from their place of burial, the way they came into the world, the way they go out. And it's, accountability. Now, bear in mind that in the earlier Italian decks, the world card came first, but the world card did not look like this in the Italian decks. It got switched to look like this later. In the earlier Italian decks, the world card was physically a picture of the world, and what you or an image of an affluent Italian city, representing what you could achieve on this planet. And then this is after you have achieved on this earth that it's time to deal with your maker. But the card got changed, representing something differently, and so it came at the last card of the Triumph Order. Oops. And then I'll do real quick, because I know these videos get kind of long, and you guys usually don't hang out with me that long. But here we see the suit of swords. The swords almost seem like a shadow, you know? When we have the odd sword, we have it like it's a thing, right? But when we have like the even swords, it's kind of like a shadow. It's kind of almost not there. And there's the sprigs of acacia. We have the ornamentation of vines. Very delicate flowers. People in varying costume, and some looking, you know, non-gender specific, and some looking, you know, very gender specific. Okay, let's look at these quickly. Wow, that was perfect. So we still see the traditional TDM hand thrust with the sword and all the others. But this, you know, this is where the Matronua just blows me away with this, with the pips. The pips are just as gorgeous and detailed. And if you want to see my detailed explanation, or not explanation, but my detailed commentary, I've done many decks on the Matronua, and I've done one just by itself. But whew, man, you know, the sword in the sheath and the glint on the blade. And this is all done by hand. If you make a mistake, you're starting from scratch. It's like typing on a typewriter versus having a word processor. You can't erase it and just fill it in with something new, right? You have to like redo it or fake it so well that nobody notices. But I have showcased this deck very well. Both of the decks I've done justice to both of them. Okay, so here we have the cups. Beautiful delicacy here. Brightness of color. And we have in keeping with, you know, traditional TDM layout. Maybe the floral stuff is a little bit different, but it's a modern day Marseille. Charming details. Like the base of the thing is almost a plant. You can get lost in both of these decks. And here we have someone of who are they? Here's my boyfriend. Okay, so here we have the suit of cups in the Matronua. We see the leakage. Do we have that? Do we see a leak in the Metanoia? No. In traditional TDM, we do. Well, this could be referencing leaks, perhaps. In the TDM, you know, we do see like a spout of water coming out, and then Valentina just does it very realistically. You know, a leak of water. We have water in the background. And we have the same kind of magical colors in the form of stained glass that are articulated here. Here the border, all along, which I haven't commented on, we have the border that sort of imitates the Rivoltini folding of paper. But here she ignores it, and she has the fish over top. You can kind of see a trace of the Rivoltini, but she's painted over it. And I've mentioned many times that this is so detailed that you can almost expect to run your finger over that and feel the texture or the ribs of the goblets. So extraordinary. Now the Metanoia, I think you're lucky if you can get and there's my boyfriend here. I think you're really lucky if you can get either of them, the pocket size that I have, and I don't even think it's possible to get the big one unless you're really willing to shell out major dollars. The Matronua, there may be some that, Valentina has. I know she's still packing and sending out orders from the Kickstarter. And she sends, updates to us. If you're still waiting on your Matronua, I can vouch for her. You're going to get it. She's just working like a fiend. And she might be getting to the point where she might have some left over from the Kickstarter. So she may be able to send some out. So if you want to get any from, that are left over from the Kickstarter, go find her on Instagram at Matronua, okay? As far as the Metanoia go, I guess you go to Bouchette Design and see if you can find what they have there. Or if you're lucky, perhaps, somebody's selling it on eBay. So we have the traditional hand, but, a modern take. And if you love the way, if you're tactile like I am, I love the way this paper feels. Look at that intricate design. It's so beautiful. Alrighty. Thank you for being patient while I'm trying not to grab too many cards. So we have, look at that. I mean, we see like a tree stump that's been, it's just gorgeous. But neither compromise in, we know what this is. We know this is a TDM style. They both honor and recognize the patterns. They may change or embellish the floral stuff. And these are different people than we're accustomed to seeing. We have a beautiful shield. We have the identification, as we do in many TDMs, including the Metanoia. We have the Matronua Marseille symbol there on the 4 coins. So they're similar in that they're both gorgeous. The artistry is delivered differently, and they have the perks of each of their style. We have the twinkling that we can get perhaps more on the, stylus and a art pad, a computer art pad. But we get something else here. We get, tradition. We get every blade of grass, every piece of dust is articulated. Here we have it. So I hope you enjoyed this side by side. I hope you can get either or both of these decks, according to your tastes and what you prefer to have. I'm thrilled to have both of them. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and be brave.